adrift. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center, under it all, what we have that no one can take away, and all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I'm adrift, feeling punctuated by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad, and everything is so beautiful. We dedicate our chalice lighting this morning in the memory of Susan Dietfolds. Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek. Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds which link us to all people.
Its radiance calling us to seek justice, equity, and compassion for all the world.
Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth. Thus do we covenant together. Children of all ages are invited forward for a story with Lisa.
So, our story today is called, it's got beautiful pictures, Addie's Cup of Sugar by John Muth. Addie and her pet kitten were best friends. They did everything together. When she was very young, his meow sounded like the tooting of a tiny brass horn. Addie named him Trumpet. They woke up together every day. Trumpet sat on the covers and wouldn't move until Addie got out of bed. When Trumpet was with her, the world was brighter and warmer. But one day, shortly after they moved into their new neighborhood, it happened. Trumpet was hit by a car. Addie was very sad. Trumpet couldn't be gone. This couldn't really be happening. There must be something she could do. Then Addie remembered her friend Stillwater. He knew a lot about how to help people. He would know how to bring Trumpet back again. Addie ran to find him. Stillwater, Stillwater, Addie cried out. You have to help make Trumpet alive again. Please make him come back. Oh, Addie, Stillwater said softly, I am so sorry. Perhaps we can find the medicine you need. But first you will need all the right ingredients. You must go around the neighborhood and find someone to give you a cup of sugar. Stillwater handed Addie an empty cup. Fill this cup with sugar and bring it to me so we can mix it into the right medicine. But the most important thing of all is that the sugar must be from a home where death is a stranger. Addie hurried outside. She ran as fast as she could to the nearest house. Emma, who was visiting her grandmother, answered the door. "Do you have a cup of sugar I could have?" asked Addie. "Yes, I'm sure we do," Emma said. "Oh, good," said Addie. "Stillwater needs it for a special medicine." Then Addie remembered, "Does anybody in your family know someone who has died?" "My grandpa died last year," said Emma. "Oh," said Addie, unsure of what to say next. "I'm sorry about your grandpa, but the sugar for this medicine must be from a home where no one has died. I'm sorry to bother you," she said. Addie ran through the backyards and beneath the laundry that hung on clotheslines. The linen sheets that brushed against her skin felt like Trumpet's rough tongue. She never knew that a cat's tongue felt like until she met Trumpet. Addie went to another house and knocked. She was surprised when her school librarian answered the door. "Please," said Addie, "I'm helping my friend Stillwater make a special medicine. I need to find a cup of sugar, but it must be from a home where no one has died." "I'm sorry," said the librarian quietly. "Last week, our dear old dog Gracie died in her sleep. I wish I could be of more help." "Oh," said Addie, as quiet as the librarian. "That's okay. Thank you, and I'm sorry about your Gracie." Addie ran from neighbor to neighbor, looking for a cup of sugar from a home where death was a stranger, but she couldn't find a single one. Each person had at one time or another lost someone who was dear to them. Knowing she had to hurry, Addie scampered across the yard through some bushes between the trees. A rabbit watched her run past, the pupils in his eyes growing so very large. It was like when Trumpet would sit very still and watch and wait, and then he would pounce. Ouch! Addie's pant leg got caught on a sticker bush. A sharp thorn broke the skin on her knee. She sat down and unhooked the thorn. "I'm sorry, Trumpet," Addie said. "I'm trying to help you as quickly as I can." Addie thought about all the people she had met today. When she looked at their faces, she knew how each of them had felt. And while she was still very sad, she did not feel quite so alone. She thought of Trumpet, how he chased dragonflies in the yard, how she would find him curled up asleep in the funniest places, how his little pink toes felt so soft, how he would purr and rub his chin against her cheek while she lay in the grass looking at the clouds. The light was chasing the end of the day. After a long moment watching the sky, Addie stood and began to run. Back to Stillwater. Stillwater was waiting for her on the porch. "I have no sugar, Stillwater," Addie said. "Everyone I met today has lost someone they love." "But I understand now," she said. "The medicine was for me, wasn't it?" Stillwater smiled, a beautiful, sad smile. "How will I ever stop being sad about Trumpet?" asked Addie. Stillwater held Addie close. "You may always be sad about him," said Stillwater. "Only time can make it hurt less. And while you can't see him the way you once did, he has not really gone away. He is in your heart, and he always will be." Thank you so much for listening to the story today. song of love and
It is now time for the offering. The offering we take each Sunday is an opportunity to recommit to this place and to these people. It is as much a ritual as singing together, lighting our chalice, or reciting our unison affirmation. The offering plate on Sundays is one way we can financially support this congregation. We can also do this through our time and talent, and financially through e-transfer or weekly withdrawal. It is how we show that we believe it is important to worship together, to help our community, and to say yes to the values of our faith. The offering reflection today is by Joey Kidney, who writes, "I think we need to love people even when they leave, instead of believing that they'll stay forever. We hold on to memories like they're promises, as if love is meant to last only if it never ends. What if love isn't about forever? What if it's about letting them go, even if that means they leave without you? Maybe it was meant to be brief, just enough to dance or laugh or share dreams. You can still smile for them because you loved them once, and that's something beautiful." The offering will now be gratefully received.
So beautiful, Becky. Thank you. Our reading today is from Joan Didion's memoir, The Year of Magical Thinking, in which the author analyzed her own process of grief in the year after her husband's sudden death by heart attack in 2003. Didion observes, "Grief turns out to be a place none of us know until we reach it. We anticipate, we know that someone close to us could die, but we do not look beyond the few days or weeks that immediately follow such an imagined death. We misconstrue the nature of even those few days or weeks. We might expect, if the death is sudden, to feel shock. We do not expect this shock to be obliterative, dislocating to both body and mind. People who have recently lost someone have a certain look, recognizable maybe only to those who have seen that look on their own faces. I have noticed it on my face, and I notice it now on others. The look is one of extreme vulnerability, nakedness, openness. It is the look of someone who walks from the ophthalmologist's office into the bright daylight with dilated eyes, or of someone who wears glasses and is suddenly made to take them off. We set aside time in our Sundays to honor the joys and sorrows of our personal lives that we wish held up for support or celebration. If you have a candle you'd like to light, you may do so in silence. If there's something you wish to share, you may come to the microphone and let us know how your community can support you in this time. Let us light the first candle for all those affected by the trauma and drama of this world. May we dedicate our own lives to the creation of peace. And I will light a candle of joy. Yesterday, we welcomed Holland Eslin into the Babineau family. Kamini's a grandpa.
I'm going to light a candle of joy because my daughter is getting married on the 10th of this month.
We had a couple of birthdays in the house last month, January. So Ty and Hera are now 19 and 16.
I'm Ellen, and I have a tandem of two rollators coming with us. Anyway, Tom Brown and Jim Sanas are here, and with our daughter Deidre, who was so kindly to drive us and wants to be here too. Otherwise, she's in Guelph. So that is a candle of joy, and I'm hogging this because I have also a candle of sadness. My son Sebastian has to move out from next door to us for 2 months because he had water damage in his apartment, and tomorrow they're going to inspect if we have to move out too, temporarily. If that happens, it's a disaster. It's already a disaster because he was next door to us. If something happens, Sebastian. So sorry. Yeah. Scary.
Hi there, Carol here. Yes, I'm a mess. I'm all over the mess. This opportunity with my dad has opened all these other opportunities. I just happened to be in the neighborhood of a friend in Toronto, so I just went to visit. And it turns out she has terminal brain cancer. And it's like, oh, there's just all these pieces. You know, I haven't seen her in years. So just, you know, if you feel like you're being annoying because you're just going to stop in on somebody, just stop in on the people in your life. You just don't know what's going on for them and how it's going to shake out. So I'm massively thankful for this community. So thank you to all of you.
Hi, I'm Judith. I'm lighting a candle for Quinn, who got accepted to the University of Toronto.
Hi, I'm Tom. We've already lit a candle for Susan. My dad is in the hospital and with acute heart failure, so I'm going to light a candle for him.
We'll light a final candle for all those joys and sorrows here unspoken, but precious in our hearts. Let's sing to one another our pastoral song, Spirit of Life. Joan Didion writes, "We are imperfect mortal beings, aware of that mortality even as we push it away, failed by our very complication, so wired that when we mourn our losses, we also mourn, for better or for worse, ourselves, as we were, as we are no longer, as we will one day not be at all."
Rule number 1 of leading a Sunday morning reflection: you shouldn't do a sermon if you're still processing. This shouldn't be a therapy session for the speaker. The congregation should be learning, feeling, reflecting, looking inward, not wanting to give you a hug or rush up with a tissue. I'd like to think I have enough distance from some of these events that I can speak with some detachment, give an engineer's perspective. Can I do that? Come on this journey with me and we'll find out together. Not everyone here has been with us for over a decade, so I'll start with some background. My first wife, Susan Diefholz, for whom we lit a candle, whom I met when I was 23, passed away from cancer just over a decade ago at the age of 42. So now that we're acquainted, let's dig in. Many wonderful things have been said about Sue, but that's not my main focus today. I'd like to make this all about me. I tried to put that in as self-aggrandizing a way as I could, but I think it starts to get at the topic. There is a particular set of experiences that those who live beside suffering and death feel. I'm going to unpack some of that, and in doing so, I hope that you'll have a new perspective on your or others' experiences. If I'm going to start in the most standard way possible, let me dig up Mr. Noah Webster's definition of grief: deep and poignant distress caused by or as if by bereavement. That's a pretty good description, but as anyone who has felt it will recognize, the actual feeling can't be conveyed any more than you can explain what being happy or angry is like. We often call it a deep sadness, but that misses the mark. Sadness, of course, is part of it, but sadness over what? It's easy to say sadness over loss, and this too starts to get at some of it, because the loss starts much earlier than you might expect, and it's not one loss either. For me, I don't think the loss started with Susan's initial cancer diagnosis. We'd faced health challenges together, and my engineer brain immediately went into project management and problem-solving mode. It's just a spot of cancer, they'll nip it right out, and we'll go on. But then the second meeting with the oncologist was where I had my first experience with emotional vertigo. He said, stage 4, and my field of view narrowed like I was about to pass out. Susan, of course, handled it far better in the moment, but I think that's when I had a first inkling of loss. Was it grief at that point for a loss that was by no means assured? I think that pulls us into semantic weeds. But that incident marked the beginning of a transitional time, a liminal space between when we got the news and when it was internalized, and then finally when it actually came to pass. That was just before Christmas 2014, Merry Christmas. There was a small pit in my stomach that opened then, and well, it's mostly closed now. The losses piled up over the course of 2015. She had a stroke, something that's apparently common with cancer, and lost some of her speech and physical capabilities with that. She went on chemo and lost her hair and slowly began to dissolve, physically and mentally. She faded from being a true intellectual to someone who couldn't remember even the basics of the law that she had been practicing a year earlier. The pathways of treatment closed off one by one, and meanwhile I felt that it was my duty to be strong, to be her rock, while I too felt like I was beginning to crack. And that hope, that exhausting, frustrating hope. I think this brings us to something that I certainly had not appreciated, that grief is not just a loss of a person, but it's a processing of an emotional dissonance that often long predates when a loved one dies. It's a debt that builds up while you're a caregiver or even an observer. an elastic that's pulled tighter and tighter. I certainly didn't mind accruing that debt. I felt it was my duty. But I lost close to 50 pounds that year, and my hair lost much of its color. And when that elastic snapped back, it took a lot with it. When I think back on that year, though, I don't think, wow, I really should have had better balance, taken more me time. No, I think, of course, why didn't I do more? Why didn't I push harder? And of course, that was one of my regrets when Susan did pass. Why hadn't I been there more for her? Did I do enough? Was I enough? And so when we think about what someone can grieve, it can be an eternal second guessing of care. But even those whose lives change in an instant have regrets, of course. The finality of it all. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you're going to fix that decision. You're going to apologize for that thing you said. You're going to raise that topic that you've been afraid to broach. There's an obvious lesson there. Just talk to the people in your life. Apologize. Fix it. Talk about it. But the funny thing is, there will always be something that later pops up in your mind that you didn't take care of. So maybe one of the less obvious lessons there is be gentle with yourself. You're just human. You won't fix it all. You're going to have to live without perfect resolution. Not long after Susan passed away, I had a particularly, kind of trite moment of insight. I happened to be at Kitchener City Hall, and I saw a perfectly ordinary selection of people walking by. And this thought struck me. Everyone here who's over, say, 60, in fact, many of the people who aren't, has lost someone. Maybe a parent, or maybe both. Maybe a sibling, or a partner. Maybe a child. And here I am with this enormous chasm in my existence that I'm trying not to fall into. And I think I'm different, special. That person there, that person there, and that person, they've all been here. And they're all walking around with this huge cloud. But of course, they were just chatting with a friend, smiling, laughing, scowling or yelling. This is Kitchener City Hall, after all. Whatever had happened to each and every one of them, they had integrated it into their new being. They had become someone new, partly their old person, partly something different, whatever it was that they had experienced. In The Truth About Grief, journalist Ruth Davis Konigsberg outlines the typical timeline for that integration, absent cultural norms that push people one way or the other. Most people experience deep grieving for anywhere from a few weeks to about a year. Konigsberg notes that studies show that the depth or length of grief are not significantly affected by therapy, except for those who exhibit what is called pathological or complicated grief. This prolonged deep mourning, sometimes extending into many years, is exemplified by Joan Didion's experience, detailed in her memoir, The Year of Magical Thinking. While short-term grief can be thought of as a temporary change in thinking and behavior, resolving on its own, complicated grief is indeed more complicated, no less valid, but more rare and often needing treatment. And yet, our society has become so distanced from loss that we, in many ways, valorize complicated grief while dismissing those who may not grieve outwardly at all. Konigsberg's book, which I found fascinating and personally helpful in the weeks and months after Susan's death, details our culture's pendulum swing. We went from small personal rituals around death in the early 1800s to lengthy public mourning in the Victorian era, the era of a queen who dressed in black for decades after her husband's death, the era of death masks and posed photos.
The horrors of the First World War brought the pendulum back to the other extreme, where keeping a stiff upper lip was prized over any public displays. And then, starting in the 1960s and 70s, the current wave, bolstered by our society opening up with itself, as well as the incentive for self-help seminars, grief counseling, and all manners of grief rituals to prolong the grieving. Many people today, including myself a decade ago, feel some kind of self-disappointment or a need to apologize when our grieving fails to reach the standard that the grief industry demands of us. My journey brought me to Andrea and her kids well within that first year. I'm still grateful for the love and kindness that everyone in this congregation showed us. It also occurred to me that when we classify things, I have to classify things, I'm an engineer, I'm sorry. Objects, experiences, people, we often generalize things to be similar in large ways, but then different in the specifics. I've come to the realization that this may be the other way around, at least with some of these grief experiences. The lingering effects of grief, the small anecdotes, are often easily recognizable in many others, even when the large strokes are very different. The sudden loss of someone to a heart attack or a traffic accident is very different from a years-long decline with age or illness. And yet, many of the little touch points of grief may be similar. For weeks, I had set aside everything and simply gotten up in the morning, gone to the hospital, sat with Susan, maybe did some reading or work on a laptop while she was sleeping, and then headed home. The night after Susan passed away, I woke up in the middle of the night. And for about 3 or 4 seconds, I was still married. I still had someone at the hospital that I needed to go visit. And then bam, nope, she's dead. A few hours later, I'd wake up again, and once again, a few seconds, and then nope. It took a few days for this to stop. I don't think our brains are properly wired for this kind of a shock. And it's one of the petty little horrors that our humanness inflicts on us. In popular culture, there's one big moment of realization when someone passes, and then the story moves on. No one tells you that you will re-experience this numerous times. Surprise! Another example that I found that others may relate to as well is the cycle of the year. The December diagnosis, the trip to the Cleveland Clinic in January, followed by a stroke, the discussions and procedures, the chemo, the trips to the ICU, and our final visit to BC to visit her family. BC, where she finally went into a hospital and had to be transferred to Grand River only to pass away a few days later. The outpouring of love from our community. And then a brief period from September through her diagnosis in December, and then the cycle begins again, year after year. The first 3 or 4 years, the cycle was a constant little heartbeat for me, helpfully aided by Facebook's You Have Memories on This Day. Hey, you remember this particular photo? It turns out, by the way, you can turn that off. Thank goodness. A final example, I made a brief journal of my experiences as Susan's illness progressed and when she finally passed. I'd known for the last decade that the journal was there, but I hadn't touched it until a couple of weeks ago. I made the mistake of reading it as I was preparing for this talk. Word to the wise, that scab that's formed over your memories is there for a reason. Our minds are simply, again, not wired properly for this kind of trauma. We process our experiences, relieve the enormous tension within us, integrate what we can, and blissfully forget what we need to. The flip side of that forgetting is that our memory fades, all of it. Like an old dime, the ridges get smoother with time. Ironically, I clearly remember thinking 10 years ago that my memory of Susan would become more exaggerated over time, with a few prominent peaks and valleys and everything else smoothed out. This has proven accurate, or so I think. I mean, it's hard to remember. And of course, the person who passes is frozen in time. What would she have thought of the political and social developments over the last decade? She wasn't there for my recent personal achievements, and we will never know what she herself would have achieved. And of course, what would she think of my marriage to Andrea, my 4 lovely stepkids, and the birth of my wonderful son, who, without Susan's passing, would not exist? Is he not the ultimate beauty to come out of this ultimate loss? I need to hold a cognitive dissonance in my mind to completely grieve Susan while knowing that many wonderful things have come to pass in her wake. Grief then is a bit like a sore in your mouth that you can't stop touching with your tongue. You probe it a bit and it hurts like hell, so you stop. Then a little while later you poke it again. Yep, still hurts. You certainly could stop poking it, so why don't you? I'd always had an affinity for Stoic philosophy, so Marcus Aurelius' thoughts feel on point. In its essence, Stoic philosophy shares many aspects with Buddhist thought, especially in its treatment of attachment and impermanence and how those lead to suffering. Marcus Aurelius asks us to remember that when we kiss our child goodnight, they may not be alive in the morning. He himself experienced that loss, outliving 9 of his 14 children. I don't know how seriously most people take this advice, but once you've lost someone close, it's hard not to at least occasionally visualize it happening, touching your tongue to that sore. There's even an app called We Croak that gives you 5 quotes a day about death. As if I were not still reminded of her by a mention of a random work of art, or a hymn that she loved, or a piece of music that I hadn't even heard yet when she had died, go figure, or by a piano that her father had bought us as a wedding present. I can understand how some people would fall into despair and fear attachment after a loss. Again, we're not wired to understand this. But there is an exhilarating beauty to impermanence, to the everyday mundane world. You're not wired to recognize that either, so it's constant work. I've slipped many times and will continue to slip and let that veil of stability cloud my vision. We so want that world of illusions, in the language of Buddhism, to be real. But how precious is an afternoon with your mom or your son when you know at the back of your mind that this is just a fleeting instant. The need to spend time with the people I love has very much shaped who I am in the last decade. In talking about the discovery of beauty through grief, I am again upstaged by Susan herself. In 2014, prior to any inkling of cancer, any symptoms manifesting, she gave a talk right here on rebirth through pain. In it, she talked about passing through gates of denial or suffering and coming into a new kind of peace and understanding of the world on the other side. These are the experiences and the stories of many archetypal heroes, perhaps most notably Jesus. And maybe it's from here that I can offer a final trite yet deep lesson, that of hope. It's such a cliche to say, it'll get better, or it's beautiful on the other side of your loss. But the world is still here. Or rather, I'm still here. the world was completely destroyed and remade, and it's really beautiful.
Just let that sink in a little bit. In my last conversation with Susan, she said two things. One, that she trusted your resilience, and that gave her hope. And two, that she believed a child would be born into this congregation. We're going to close with one of Susan's favorite hymns, number 1064, Blue Boat Home. We close with a reminder by the poet Andrea Gibson, who wrote of her own impending death by cancer last year. Dying is the opposite of leaving. Why did no one tell us that to die is to be reincarnated in those we love while they are still alive? Let the people say, Amen.